afternoon, everybody. Welcome to today's Q&A. We're going to be talking about supporting your loved one with their mental health. My name is Sharon Spurlock. I'm the Senior Director of Family Education here at the St. Louis ARC. We're going to turn to our guest and have some introductions. So welcome, Sue and Leanna, our mental health first aid team. Let's start off with you, Sue. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your role at the ARC.
Started with the ARC a little bit over 5 years ago. I have been training coordinator here and spent a lot of time as well supporting people throughout the years with disabilities, with extensive behavior support needs. And personally at home, I've had 9 young adults who needed safety nets in their lives, who have stayed with me for varying amounts of time as well. So mental health is a big thing in my life. Learned a lot through also being an instructor for mental health first aid.
And Leanna, welcome back.
Hi, I'm Leanna. I'm the therapist here at the ARC for adults with disabilities. I've been working at the ARC for about 7 years now. Before the ARC, I worked at a school for children with autism and behavioral support needs. And now, with mental health first aid, we've been able to support our staff and ourselves as well as the people that we support and getting the best possible support when they are having a mental health crisis, and also what that looks like with somebody who has a disability.
Thank you, Leanna. So let's start off. I think everybody expects us to teach CPR and first aid to our employees, but can you tell everybody a little bit about what mental health first aid is about and why is that important? Maybe I'm going to start with Sue, our trainer.
So mental health first aid is really important because we can treat mental health challenges a lot more effectively if we recognize them early and we start intervening. Most people with disabilities have experienced some trauma in their lives. And because of that trauma, whether that's bullying, whether that's abuse of some sort, that increases the likelihood that they will also experience a mental health challenge or crisis in their lifetime by about 40%. So that definitely becomes something that we really need to watch for. And also, if somebody has experienced that crisis, to look at relapse plans as well, so that we are watching and seeing how people are doing in the long term. It also affects our staff because at least they're saying 70% of our population has experienced trauma and 76% of our graduating high school seniors. That means our staff most of them have experienced it as well. And if you have a staff person who's supporting someone with a disability and something happens, they may react to that as well. So it's being helping our staff be aware of their reactions, how they can support themselves and each other.
I'm curious, Leanna, because we've been teaching this to our employees now, what you see as real important components of teaching the mental health first aid. Why is it worth our time and effort to do that?
Super important to teach about this. The mental health first aid that Sue and I teach, we talk a lot about the specifics of disability as well as mental health crisis. So a lot of times people know how to help first aid if there's an injury. Mental health crisis aren't typically seen as something that's a crisis, where when we're out in the community or supporting someone who's having a mental health crisis, there hasn't really been a criteria to follow. So this is a really great criteria to follow if we are seeing somebody who does have a disability or having a mental health crisis or both. This is a great opportunity because Sue and I get to teach specifically about disabilities and how that may look a little bit different. I think that's really helped a lot of our staff how to access support for this person in the safest, best way possible. And also what to look for in early signs as well. That way they get a person help before things may become a crisis.
I think there's been so much stigma about mental health that for me, one of the things that was really important about the class was actually getting some hands-on experience about how to talk to people about mental health in a way that feels supportive and not confrontational. And I think the fact that I remember, kind of just the idea of people being able to recover from mental illness. That was not something that was considered a possibility when I was in school, when I was younger. So those kind of things really impacted me, I think, thinking about that. I do want to kind of stop here before we go any further and have you guys talk a little bit about how you got the opportunity to do this training. I want to recognize our umbrella organization, the ARC of the United States, for giving us this opportunity.
So United Health Group had a grant that they offered through the ARC of the United States, or the National ARC. And so I believe there's 8 different ARC chapters in the United States that are offering this training through that. And specifically, they ask us not only to teach it, but to adapt it for people with disabilities. So, and then they've come back and they're giving us a lot of support as instructors as far as how we teach the class, how we can adapt it a little bit and yet still maintain the fidelity of the class.
So both of you have mentioned making adaptations for people with disabilities. Can you give an example of how the mental health first aid might be delivered differently to a person with an intellectual or developmental disability?
So typically, for example, when somebody might be going through a mental health concern or crisis like depression, they might not have the motivation to shower or wear long sleeves if it's cold or wear clean clothes, maybe not dressing appropriately for the weather. A lot of times, people who have sensory needs, that may be something that's really hard for them to do. So maybe a shower every day is not going to be their top priority if they might need movement supports. Or wearing long sleeves may be really hard if they have sensory needs. So the way people interact may be different. Sometimes people who might have autism might have different emotions for different things that we're expecting, but that doesn't mean that they're going through a mental health crisis. And that those are one of the signs that mental health first aid teaches. So we usually talk about the differences between that and kind of what to look for.
We had a pre-submitted question, and I think this is always such an interesting thing to think about. It's a grandparent whose grandson with autism has begun having aggressive issues at work. And so this is not something that's been a pattern of theirs for a long time. They asked about where to go for counseling, but I'm also going to flip this and have you think about what are the possibilities about some mental health issues that might rear up if somebody's suddenly struggling in a work environment.
One of the things to think about is that behavior is communication. So if this person doesn't normally interact that way, something's going on that is making them react in a way that they normally wouldn't. So if there's a way to figure out what's going on, and that's easier said than done sometimes, but figuring out what's going on. One thing that I would say, there's resources on our YouTube page, and we did a training on 4 tools. Those 4 tools might help some. And then the other piece of that question was counseling. So I'm going to let Leanna jump in for that other piece.
Through counseling, we would definitely try to figure out what the behavior is telling us. So it could be something happened at work. Maybe something is overstimulating at work, and that's why these behaviors are showing up. Through counseling, I really try to focus on a lot of coping skills. If somebody is not ready to talk about traumatic events or something that's happening to them, I try to give them autonomy with that. But before that, if they're not ready to talk about that, I usually will talk about coping strategies, and we'll talk through ways that they feel supported when they do feel overwhelmed or upset. So kind of just what their support needs are in those times. So we really try to look at that in those moments.
I do want to go ahead and talk about your audiences for this class, because it's not just been our employees. And one of the reasons we're doing this Q&A is that we're hoping to be able to offer this for families in the future, maybe in the spring, to give them some of the same tools. Can you talk just about the parameters of the class, how long it is, whether you need to be face-to-face or virtual? What should families expect if they want to consider this class?
So the class runs about 2 hours of pre-work that you do online, and then about 4.5 hours of content in person. So it depends if that's a whole day, there would be a lunch break, a couple other breaks. So it would run about 5.5 hours probably. Or we could do like 2 evenings. So it just kind of depends on how that breaks down, but you're looking at about a 6-hour commitment to the class. As far as, yeah, we've done it for a lot of our staff, but we've also done it for some of the maker spaces that you see. So like Made Makerspace, which is down by Coca 5127, I believe, Del Mar. Not 100% sure there, but down on Del Mar. They ask us so that when they had people come in that are using power tools and that kind of thing, that they can support them. We are looking at training 112 of our Metro drivers and mentors. So we're really excited about that. Let's see who else. We've done some of the Webster Arts. We've trained some of our counseling interns. We're looking at doing Sugar Witch Bakery and some other, like a coffee shop that is sometimes supporting people who don't have a place to stay. So it's been kind of exciting to see the different places that are interested.
That's really interesting because those places aren't typically disability places. You're really building community capacities. So anybody can go to Sugar Witch or to the art fair. And if they're having a struggle, hopefully the team there knows a little bit more about how to take care of them. Do you feel like that's already addressed with first responders, or do you think there's an opportunity with first responders to offer some
I would
training?
love to teach first responders. Mental health first aid really stops where first responders start. So we teach you how to call 988 and how to then turn it over to first responders. Even our crisis intervention team officers only get 5 hours of training. I did get an opportunity through this grant to talk to 150 crisis intervention officers for an hour. But we would love to build those relationships more.
Leanna, is there a population you'd love to be able to get out and share this information with?
I definitely think first responders, it would be great, especially because of the disability aspect. It just looks very, very different. Communication is going to be different, especially with people only getting 5 hours. That's not a lot. So being able to get more and knowing what to expect in those moments and how to help somebody regulate themselves is really important. I really think anybody in the community could use this. This is kind of why all those community spaces have been reaching out. It's places that get anybody that can come in, and they see a lot of mental health crisis and people that they want to help and don't necessarily know how to help in a safe way. So this gives resources to really everyone. I wish this were around when I was growing up. I feel like this is such a good, valuable class.
Yeah. Yeah. So what is our expectations for this grant? How long does the grant go on? How many people are we supposed to train? What does that look like?
Goes until October of 2026, although it looks like we will probably continue after that. We will see. We're supposed to train at least 200 people. We've already trained, I believe, 137. I may have done 5 or 6 more than that. And we'll be well over that with our Metro drivers, but we'll continue to do that so that, it's a valuable resource that's out there. So
if one of our families feels like their business or a community center or their school district might benefit from some of this training, is there a way that they could reach out?
they can get a hold of me at Shaw, so SSHAW at SLARC.org.
So, I've listened to you, Sue, several times since we started this. And one of the things that I've really been fascinated about is that you have approached our employees through the lens of mental health first aid as a trainer in ways that I don't think you did before. Can you talk a little bit about how it shaped your work as a trainer?
So one of the things that happens with supporting people with disabilities is we tend to silo things, which just means keep them separate. So we've got people with disabilities, and then we've got mental health needs and challenges. We've got people experiencing trauma. We've also got a cultural aspect to that. And so looking at all of those pieces in order to teach somebody or actually support them holistically, we need to be looking at all of those pieces. And we don't tend to do that. We tend to say, oh, this person has a disability, they'll be supported by this organization. This person has mental health issues, we're going to send them over here. And we don't address all of those different needs. We've realized that, as we may have some people that we're supporting that don't read, and we're saying you have to complete this paperwork or we're letting you go out of the program. So just realizing a lot of those, cultural things, and culture is big picture and little picture, what's in your household, just recognizing all those different ways that people react and interact. Really changes the way we look at supporting people and supporting our staff when they react in a way that didn't make sense to us as well.
What about you, Leanna? From a counseling lens, has there been an impact for you?
Yeah, definitely. I think helping people also, this class has also helped people understand their own traumas and kind of why they might react certain ways. I really enjoy the part where we talk about how we can take care of ourselves. During those classes, we do talk about different ideas of how people do take care of themselves. And I always talk about the start the dishwasher again method, where the people that support the people that we work with might not have time to go out and do self-care. Maybe they just did an overnight shift at one of the houses and have to go take care of their kids. That doesn't give a lot of time for self-care. So I always talk about taking things out of your schedule, and that could be running your dishwasher again instead of unloading it. And then I think with my counseling for consent with the people that I work with, when they do consent to have support from their family members or staff, having this background of what the trauma can look like and what mental health crisis can look like with disability can really help staff help support this person. And it can help outside of counseling, which is really great. So it gives staff the tools to feel more confident when they are supporting these people that might be going through a crisis. And it also gives them the tools to help them take care of themselves as well.
I do think it's important to take care of yourself, and we've done other self-care videos talking about, how you don't have to do something like go get a massage for an hour and a half. You can take a minute to mindfully make a cup of tea or look out the window at birds, or something that's going to give you, looking at puppy dog videos, something that's going to just give your mind that reset opportunity. And I think that sometimes our brains just don't do that. Our brains push us into this cycle of anxiety, and then build that mental health kind of problem. Um, I'm not sure if this is really appropriate for this segment, but I'm going to ask and let you guys kind of sort through it. I think for a lot of our families, there's a lot of confusion about what to do when somebody's starting to exhibit issues like they're struggling. Is it a health problem? Is it a behavioral problem? Is it a mental health issue? What is it that I need to do to try and identify how I can help them? And do you guys have any suggestions for like how to kind of go through an assessment or a process to figure out how to best meet that person's needs?
If you are seeing something that's out of the norm, I think going if going to a medical doctor is always a good thing to do. You want to rule out any medical problems. Um, and I think also trying to have them go to a counselor if you start seeing something happen. Provident is really good at getting people in right away. There is mental health urgent care that has nurse practitioners and psychiatrists that will help regulate some medications if you can't get in to see a psychiatrist right away. So these are some proactive things that you can do. Definitely asking questions. If the person does not use words to talk, I'm always happy to make social stories for people or written out questions if anybody needs to reach out. My email is lsanders, LSANDERS @slark.org. That's a really good way for communication, or using a feelings wheel is really important. So that can help you kind of see if that person is going through something, especially if they don't use words to communicate. But doing those check-ins can be really important. And like maybe the not showering could be extreme fatigue from sickness, or it could be fatigue from depression. So that's kind of the thing where seeing a medical doctor first will be really good to do. And that could be the early stages. And then I guess later stages, that would, I don't know if that was your question, Sharon, but later stages, we definitely talk about that and mental health first aid and contacting 988 and advocating for the safety of your loved
The
one.
ABCs of behavior. So what is the behavior? What happened right before that behavior happened? Because sometimes if you really start watching what happened right before, you might be able to put it together, what's going on. Although sometimes it takes a while. I had some roommates who the young man would come in and if he heard his roommate or saw his lunchbox, so it wasn't an interaction and it took us a while to figure out what was going on. And then what happens after that behavior? So is there a consequence that's maybe strengthening that behavior as well? So that's another thing to look at.
Fantastic. I think both of your answers were exactly what I wanted to hear. And I really like, Leanna, that you highlighted that people don't have to use words to be successful in counseling, because I think that's one of the things, I think part of what you're offering is an opportunity to be myth busters. There's a lot of myths about mental health and about counseling. And I think those are things that, especially for people with disabilities, we have a responsibility to go out and uh, set the record straight. So, back to the classes, is there a cap on the class sizes?
Yes, the class size is capped at 30 people for a class. So that's a pretty big class. We tend to
Mhm.
run a lot of them a little bit smaller, but yes, 30
Yeah.
people. And let me quickly also just kind of say, we talk about crisis, mental health crisis, but we also talk about panic attacks specifically, non-suicidal self-injury, suicide and psychosis specifically. So we want you to be aware walking in that some of it is heavy material, but they give you a lot of tools as you walk through to look at.
For somebody that's been in this field for a very long time, I found it a really useful class and had a lot of good practical application for me as an employee that works with people with disabilities, as a team member for my other employees that I'm connecting with, and frankly, in my community, where this has become part of our conversation. And I want to wrap up with this question that was submitted. I think it's really a great question, and you may need a moment to think about it. But this person says, what do you think changed that we're even having conversations now about mental health? This topic in service was not available or discussed when my child was young.
Mental health definitely used to be stigmatized. A lot of times people were not supposed to talk about it. I think now people are becoming more open about it. COVID was huge, and I noticed a huge shift during that where people were a lot more open about their struggles. And kind of leading up to that, where I know generations before me, it was really embarrassing to talk about needing to take medication for depression, where now people are more open. Disability and mental health are typically siloed. So this class is actually really bringing it together, which is really nice. So it's typically not talked about at all, really, where now we kind of have the resources and people who have disabilities can have mental health crisis. So really trying to put those two worlds together is going to be really helpful and taking away that stigma. That's a huge part of this class. I think the world is starting to do that. Our society is starting to feel a little more comfortable talking about mental illness. We should treat it like injuries. If we break our leg, we go to the doctor. If we have depression, we should go to the doctor. And there's becoming to be a little more awareness about it. COVID was really bad, but I think that may have brought a little more awareness to our society with it.
Sue, do you have anything you'd like to
I
add?
was just thinking about, I supported a young man who's doesn't have a disability, but when he moved into my house, he was doing things like putting people in headlocks and punching walls and all the things I had been told were disability-based behaviors, and that it came with the disability. And I started to realize that he had been through extensive trauma, and what I was seeing was a trauma response. And I think a lot of the people that we support who have disabilities, we don't look at that behavior as a trauma response, and it isn't always, but sometimes it is. So we really need to be aware that there's more than one reason and really start looking at what has happened to them, what the history is, as well as what's going on now.
So for
Cool.
families out there, we will be probably doing a little survey to see when a class might be good for you. We want to fill the class, so if you're interested party and you don't have a child with a disability, we will do our best to include you in some future opportunity because we do want this information to get out to as many people in the area as possible. Thank you both for joining me today. It's always really fun to talk to you and to kind of focus on this because I do think while things have gotten better, I think we've still got a ways to go. So, and health first aid will help with that.